En el video que verás a continuación, durante un programa conocido como Whatever, fue invitado el muy conocidísimo en este canal, Michael Knowles, a fin de poder conversar en cuanto a qué es una mujer, la inclusión de hombres en deportes femeninos y otros temas que te llamarán la atención. Es una conversación muy enriquecedora, así que te sugiero mirarlo hasta el final a fin de poder empaparte de mucha información necesaria para poder defender la verdad. Pero antes, si este tipo de contenido te gusta, suscríbete a nuestro canal. Tenemos la meta a mediano plazo de llegar a los 100,000 suscriptores. Sin mayor dilación, comencemos.
What is a woman?
You're gonna hate me for this one, Michael.
Lay it on.
But
Before I have Michael respond to you, I want all of you to respond. Why don't we have Pixie go, then Farah, and then Jasmine. Go ahead.
a woman is a person who acts and is perceived as our societal perception of a woman.
That's at least half of it.
Farah?
I'd like to do more research on this topic before publicizing an opinion. Veto.
Are you joking? That's really your answer?
That is my answer as of now.
Hey,
Come on,
so
Farah,
even if
come
you
on.
couldn't, even if you're not going to reason about it, let's just talk from your own personal prejudices and stuff. What do you, come on, just between us gals.
Just between
Just
us.
between us gals. That's your,
We can talk after the show.
What-
But I like to
Oh,
thoroughly think
even
out
Shia
my,
LaBeouf wants you to.
I like to
Okay,
thoroughly
sorry.
think out my opinions before publicizing them and platforming them.
Come on.
you
you've
don't have a
thought of-
hunch? I bet you have a hunch of
I
what
didn't
a
say I don't
woman
have a
is.
hunch,
What's
but that
your
doesn't
hunch?
mean I want to
Come
platform
on.
my hunches.
You'd, okay.
Let's
It's
talk
too
after
dangerous
the
to
show.
venture an answer these days. Okay.
Jasmine.
Give a hunch.
Yeah.
I would take kind of Pixie's view. I think women can be, I don't think trans women and biological women are the same, but I don't think trans women are men either. Like they're, you know, you can have an umbrella term for women and have both trans women and biological women
So if
under
they're-
it
if
without realizing that, without also saying that they're exactly the same and they have all the same issues and everything's the same.
If they're neither men or women, what are they?
They are
She just
women.
said
I
that they
said
were
that, but
women.
they're, I would say they're a part of the umbrella of woman.
Okay. Not a
Yeah.
part of the umbrella of men.
Yeah, they are because they're biological men.
So they're both.
You can be a trans man or a biological man, or you can be a trans woman and a biological woman. So depending on how you're looking at it, if you're looking at biology, yeah, they're not the same.
Can you though? Can your identity be different? You know, your metaphysical identity be different from
Your biological
physical
identity can definitely be different than your social identity. Yeah.
How?
Easy. When this goes back to the whole chromosomes argument, but like you didn't check any of our chromosomes or biology before calling us a woman, right?
No,
Which kind of
I think there are enough indicators.
enough indicators,
Yeah.
but you base those indicators on like appearance. So obviously,
all
our
of my
societal,
perception.
Yeah,
You know,
so-
you look like women, you walk like women, you smell like women. I think you're women.
That's her point. It's a performance, and you're basing it off
The
of like,
secondary
sex
sex characteristics
yeah.
is what you're basing them on, and people can change their secondary sex.
your bodies is what I'm basing
yeah,
it on.
which you
Yes.
can change that.
But I'm not sure that you can actually, because I think what's here at the basis of it is a Gnostic idea that you can separate your soul and your body. And I know we don't like to use the word soul anymore, so we'll say your identity, man, or whatever. But that you can separate that from your body. And I just don't think you can. I think a woman is the sort of person who isn't a man. I think that's the basic definition of a woman.
What's a man then?
A man is the sort of person who isn't a woman
How did you know we were women?
because you look like women.
Okay,
And
so
you
if
sound
I'm-
like women,
if a-
and when I talk to you, you give the impression that you're women.
So if a really good passing trans woman is here and you were mistaken,
Then I would be mistaken, but he
Yeah.
would not be a woman.
no. But my point
But
is
I
that
can be
what
mistaken on
what
rare
you're looking
occasion.
at is secondary sex characteristics, and
Yeah.
those are things that people can
Those are the
change.
signs
So
that
to
point to the
pretend
reality
that
of their
this
sex.
is all men and women and like, you
But
know,
I'm not
this-
saying the signs are synonymous with their sex. I'm saying the signs are signs, and the signs symbolize something.
But there is something to say about somebody that like you said, walks, talks, looks like a woman, and to say that this is now 100% a man, 100. No, you have to say.
No, he would be performing as a woman, and he might even fool me, depending on how much surgery
So
he's
he would
had. But
socially be a woman.
he would try to do that, but I
he
don't
would
think
not just
society should
try.
recognize
He
those
would
He would
traits.
not
succeed
just
to the
try.
point-
He would
yeah.
succeed
to the point where
it
you
doesn't
don't
matter.
even realize it.
Yeah.
Usually you do realize is the thing. I know they
like
convince
survivor
themselves that they
bias.
really, but they, I've met plenty of transsexuals because they protest my speeches, and they usually you can tell because, again, it gets to what we're talking about at the very top of this debate, which was the question of human nature, right? I think me and old Uncle Aristotle believe that you're a body and a soul together. I'm not just my soul trapped in a useless body. I'm not just my body without a soul or totally separated from my soul. I think I'm a soul and a body together. So my body gives me much of my sex. to use the technical term, it's an inseparable accident of the individual. And I think that pertains to my whole person, because you can't separate those two, for the whole of my life.
If you change
Pixie,
your body.
can men get pregnant?
Can men get pregnant? Not biological men.
Okay.
Yeah, trans men can.
Okay.
Can we really divide men up like that? Like, I'm a biological man, but I'm a spiritual woman, and I'm a...
I mean, we do, what is it? We do classifications within gender all the time. Black woman, white woman, for example.
That'd be racial.
Yeah,
not
no,
gender,
but that's still within the scope of women. You're still saying, oh, there's women who are black, there's women who are not black. There are women who have had SA experiences, there's women who haven't had experiences.
Race is real, though it's actually more difficult to pin down than sexual difference, but it's real. Yeah, there are different races, sure. So
Yeah.
you can, black people and white people are different races, and men and women are different sexes.
Last thing
Yeah.
sorry. go ahead.
One can't become the other, except in the case of Michael Jackson, who he got the closest, but he was still, I think he was still a black guy.
Wasn't that vitiligo?
That's what he said.
Well, that's
what he said. I don't know if I believe Michael
Okay.
Jackson, because
Yeah,
he was
actually,
yeah.
you I don't want to say stumbled because that's condescending, but whatever. You stumbled onto something quite interesting.
I'm glad I did.
Because the whole idea is that when it comes to like the notion of race, the reason why Michael Jackson was technically never white, he was always black, is because we treat race as like a historical question. Basically, what we're asking when we ask somebody what's your race is basically what is your ancestry, like what got you here to be here now, versus sex or gender specifically, where we treat it more of a societal conception, like what are you performing as.
Yeah, I don't treat it that way at all, and I think that I think racial difference is real. The reason Michael Jackson's black is because he did Thriller. You know, I don't think you can't really change your race. Rachel Dolezal tried, and she ruined her life because of it. But if you could, I mean, I'm kind of swarthy, right? You might think I'm like Arabic or Mexican or something, even though I'm Italian and waspy. I don't know, waspy, which you see in the Mayflower cigar, actually. But I certainly couldn't change my sex, because the difference between a black guy and a white guy, I'm not saying there are not differences, that there are physical differences, there are cultural differences, sure, maybe, but those differences are nothing compared to the difference between a man and a woman.
Okay, the point is, I think what we're trying to get at here is that when it comes to like our conception of sex versus gender, we base our conception of gender on how somebody
Dustin
looks
Washburn donated
and acts
$200.
more than anything else.
Michael, with your talk and logic about soul and body, do you believe it's possible for the wrong soul to be placed in the wrong body?
No, because I think, following old Uncle St. Thomas Aquinas, that the sex derives mostly from the body. So it would be incoherent to say that the soul is another sex. Because if the soul were a different sex, the soul being the substantial form of the body, it would mean that men and women are different species. And men and women have a lot of differences, but we're not.
Why did God create gender dysphoria?
Dustin, thank you. Last thing on this, and I think, Pixie, you've had, on your previous appearances, you've maybe had thoughts on this, and I think feminists tend to differ on this last topic that we're going to hit on when it comes to the trans discussion, sports. Do you think that there should be separation? What are your thoughts on, for example, trans women participating in women's sports?
Yeah, so I think what I've currently seen of the data and studies is that even after taking hormones and such, there might still be advantages in certain ways. So to me, it would be like, it's a theoretical question, like I would have to have more data, but basically, if it seems that some of like these biological advantages are like too high or it cannot be mitigated enough through the use of hormones and such, then yeah, it would be too much of an unfair advantage versus if the data shows otherwise, and it's like, no, actually it is like mitigated well enough. So that's my general stance on it.
Isn't it that, aren't we just all slaves to like the data? You know, it's like, well, if the study shows,
I love the
like,
data.
Yeah, maybe, but the data are so manipulated. I mean, social scientific data, they're in a major replication crisis.
Well, if
right?
it wasn't, the scientific method is our best way to get to the truth.
Is it? I'm not sure about that.
I would say so. So I think it's the best we have. Otherwise, we just have our anecdotes and our feelings.
No,
and our
but
subjective
look,
opinions.
I'm all for empirical scientific analyses of the things that it can measure, but those are all physical things, and what we're talking about here is deeper than a physical thing, right? We're talking because we're not mere flesh. I don't think we think we're mere flesh.
Well, this is where we disagree, because we think that
you think you're just flesh?
No. We disagree on whether, like, you're like, oh, the issue here isn't the data. The data on whether this would be unfair to women is what I care about.
Well,
because if it wasn't, then I would say, yeah, they can do it.
The data on whether this is unfair to women are not going to come from some like dork economist. That those data are going to come from the reality of the different. It's going to come from natural scientists. Certainly, it's going to come from people who have an understanding of what human nature is and what justice is.
No, I don't
There's
think this is a
no,
human nature debate. I think this is about, does your muscle mass give you an advantage? And if you take hormones, it seems to not, like you said, reverse all of the advantages that you have.
How does a scientific study conclude something about fairness or justice? How do you measure
No, it
justice
doesn't.
under
It
a
doesn't
microscope?
jump to that conclusion, but we use their conclusions to then make our opinions.
Oh,
So-
you're saying so you would look at a scientific survey and say, wow, that big husky dude who swam against the women, turns out he was a lot faster than all those little women, and therefore I conclude that men competing against women in a women's sport is unjust.
No, what you should
I'm
do
with
is
you.
you
I
should
agree.
be like, hey, okay, how do we realize if, like, okay, I don't know, should trans women compete with real women? I don't know. Do they have an unfair advantage
I
by
love that
doing
you
so?
slipped there and you said real women.
Well,
That's
biological
great.
women. Okay,
I
yeah,
love it.
biological.
No, you just accidentally
Yeah,
said what we all
that
know
makes
to be
sense.
true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, biological women, you could argue, are real women, but that doesn't mean
because
trans women are not.
Which
The
implies
point-
that the trans women are not really under the category.
they're not under the
real
category of
women.
biological women. And
No,
so
no,
what
you-
I
no,
want
you just said they're not
or
under the
even
category
under
of
the,
real women.
Okay, well, you can harp on that. My point here is
No,
that
I think it's.
if-
I'm not trying to get you. I'm just
Okay.
trying to point out you
the
have
point I'm
admitted-
trying to make is if I'm trying to figure out the answer to this question, and the question for me is not what is natural or what is Catholicism say, it's is this unfair to have trans women compete with real women? Well, I want to know, and the way to know that is to look at the science, not to just look at somebody.
How do you know what's fair and what's not fair?
In sports, to have an unfair advantage, and that you could
Yes, unfair
have to
things are
compare
unfair,
the
but how do you know
averages.
what
you'd
is
have to
unfair?
compare, like, right, like you would have to see, okay, if you this is why they banned certain drugs. I don't know anything about sports. I'm assuming all this.
I'm
But,
just saying,
like,
how do you know what fairness is?
we all have, I would say that the only way you really know how fairness is that we all have kind of like a, we have a
Conscience?
feeling about it. That's all I can say.
Is it
no,
a feeling
I-
or is it
I
a
think
is it a
what is
reasonable
it?
conscience?
You can
It's-
compare averages.
You can compare averages, yeah, but also the hunch, even the idea that we all want things to be fair is like an evolutionary, in my opinion, just thing that we all kind of
But
seem to
Michael
have
Phelps
because
is
it
a
was
faster
evolutionary
swimmer than some.
advantageous.
Michael Phelps is a faster swimmer than some guy we've never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
He does he have an unfair advantage over the guy we never heard of? They have different average swimming times. Is the average swimming time going to imply something about fairness and justice? No, you need something else to come to a conclusion about justice and fairness, and that's not going to be scientific.
Well,
That's
no,
going to be
no, we're not
philosophical
saying-
and ultimately
Yeah,
religious.
I
Okay,
agree. Philosophical.
quick. Last points. Go ahead, Pixie.
I'm gonna say I do think that comparing averages does give us greater insight what's like fairness or not. So, for example, Michael Phelps competing with other Olympic swimmers is much more fair than Michael Phelps competing against like a completely average swimmer. So obviously, there's something to be said about people within like the same leagues or performing around the same level, and that's why we have like golden versus bronze versus like
Right.
silver categories.
Well, no, that would just be awards for the
Yeah,
people
no,
within
but
the
I'm
same
saying like
category. Yeah.
sorry, I should have said Division 1, Division 2, Division
Sure.
3.
So you're saying people who are of the same type, it would be fair for the people of the same type to compete against each other.
Yes.
But we've already established that trans women and real women are not of the same type, so they shouldn't compete against
Well,
each other.
that's why
Forget
we're-
about the averages.
That's why we're also saying that when it
And
comes to
then-
like hormones or certain supplements, if the divide gets bridged enough, then it might open to new discussion or different discussion.
so if you,
that's why we're
if you
saying
pump
it's
yourself full of
data-based.
enough hormones, then the trans woman who is not a real woman could become a real woman?
It's
That's
not
what
about being a real woman because, as we said before,
I was
these are
just
not
using-
just
Yeah.
these are not just matters of the flesh, as you stated before. A lot of this is about societal perception of what a woman is, and that goes back to like certain actions and certain looks. So in our day-to-day life, that's what we rely the concept of woman on: actions
Yeah.
and looks.
But I just guess I wouldn't trust society more than I would trust objective truth. You know, I think that 50 million Frenchmen can be wrong. I think that actually the majority of people.
How do
can
you think?
sometimes
What's the
get
best
things
way
wrong.
to arrive at objective truth?
I wish we could go there. Unfortunately,
We'd
we
have
are,
5 more.
we are running.
¿Crees tú en la existencia de un alma? Déjamelo saber en los comentarios. Para empezar, entiendo hasta cierto punto a la tía que dijo que debía informarse más en cuanto a lo que se iba a tratar en esa conversación a fin de dar una opinión. Sin embargo, me parece, no sé si fue impresión mía, no sé qué opinas tú, pero me parece que tuvo temor de ser cancelada. No necesariamente se requiere estar 100% preinformado sobre todos los temas antes de participar en una discusión o debate. De hecho, es común y a menudo beneficioso que las personas compartan sus conocimientos y opiniones en un intercambio abierto, incluso si no son expertos en el tema en cuestión. Participar en discusiones y debates puede ser una oportunidad para aprender de los demás y ampliar tus conocimientos sobre un tema determinado. Incluso si no tienes toda la información de antemano, puedes estar dispuesto a escuchar y aprender durante la conversación. Las discusiones suelen involucrar a personas con diferentes perspectivas y experiencias. Escuchar diferentes puntos de vista puede enriquecer la comprensión del tema y llevar a nuevas ideas. Participar en debates puede ayudar a desarrollar habilidades de pensamiento crítico, como la capacidad de analizar información, evaluar argumentos y formar opiniones fundamentadas. A veces participar en una discusión puede ayudar a aclarar conceptos o ideas que no teníamos completamente entendidos previamente. Se habló también acerca de las corazonadas. Una corazonada es una sensación subjetiva o presentimiento que una persona experimenta sin una base sólida de evidencia objetiva. Es una especie de intuición o instinto que puede guiar a alguien en una dirección particular o influir en sus decisiones y acciones. Las corazonadas suelen surgir de manera espontánea y aunque no están respaldadas por pruebas concretas, a menudo se perciben como significativas o importantes para la persona que las experimenta. Las corazonadas pueden surgir en una variedad de situaciones, desde decisiones personales hasta juicios sobre otras personas o eventos futuros. Aunque no siempre son precisas, estas pueden ser útiles como señales o pistas que sugieren una dirección a seguir, pero es importante no depender exclusivamente de ellas y considerar también la información objetiva disponible. Las corazonadas pueden desempeñar un papel interesante en las discusiones y debates, pero es importante, como repito, entender su naturaleza y cómo se puede integrar de manera efectiva en un intercambio de ideas. Una corazonada puede servir como punto de partida para la investigación y el aprendizaje. Si tienes una intuición o presentimiento sobre un tema, se puede usar como motivación para investigar más a fondo y obtener una comprensión más sólida del mismo antes de participar en una discusión. A veces una corazonada puede sugerir una dirección interesante para la discusión, puede señalar un aspecto del tema que vale la pena explorar más a fondo o puede plantear preguntas intrigantes que generen un debate más profundo. Es importante abordar las corazonadas con humildad y reconocer que pueden ser subjetivas y no necesariamente son basadas en hechos objetivos. Esto significa estar dispuesto a escuchar y considerar las opiniones y evidencias de los demás, incluso si contradicen tu corazonada inicial. Antes, durante y después de una discusión, se puede reflexionar sobre estas corazonadas y cómo han influido en las opiniones y percepciones. Esto puede ayudar a comprender mejor nuestros sesgos y prejuicios, así como a desarrollar una mayor conciencia crítica. En cuanto al tema de Aristóteles, uno de los filósofos más influyentes de la antigua Grecia, como sabrás, abordó la relación entre el cuerpo y el alma en su obra filosófica. Según Aristóteles, el alma es el principio vital o la forma de vida de un ser vivo y es lo que anima el cuerpo. Aristóteles sostuvo una teoría llamada hilemorfismo, que postula que todo ser material está compuesto de materia, hile, y forma, morfe. En el caso de los seres vivos, el cuerpo sería la materia y el alma sería la forma que anima y da vida al cuerpo. Según Aristóteles, el alma es responsable de las funciones vitales de un ser vivo, como el crecimiento, la nutrición, la percepción y el movimiento. Estas funciones están intrínsecamente ligadas al cuerpo y son facilitadas por él. Es por eso que Knowles toma este tema. Aristóteles consideraba que el alma y el cuerpo estaban intrínsecamente conectados y que interactuaban entre sí. El alma no podía existir sin el cuerpo, ya que era el principio organizador que daba forma y función al cuerpo. ¿Y tú qué opinas? Déjamelo saber en los comentarios. Y aquí culmina este video. Si te gustó, dale like, comenta el video y compártelo. Esto es muy importante para que nuestro canal crezca. Gracias, hasta luego.